Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today we've got a bit of a wild day, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the name Karl Jobst. He's a pretty popular YouTuber, that covers speedrunning mishaps on the internet. You probably also know Karl from a massive lawsuit involving him against Billy Mitchell. Now, if you don't know the name Billy Mitchell, well, then welcome to the world of video gaming high records. Billy Mitchell is formerly, or at least currently known as the King of Kong. If you don't know, King Kong, Donkey Kong was a super old arcade game. Billy Mitchell once, had a super duper high score on it. I believe still does. And generally through it, it became a massive point of contention from a lot of the speedrunning community. People like Karl Jobst, plenty of other speedrunning YouTubers decided to take a little bit of a new look at this man's Donkey Kong record and basically said that, it probably involved some undue play, if you will. And for a long time, this started a lawsuit that involved YouTubers and Billy Mitchell. And Billy Mitchell was already this polarizing figure. A lot of us really wanted to see Billy Mitchell absolutely fail because we really didn't think his records were legit. Well, yesterday in Australian court, Karl Jobst is the one that actually lost this case. And normally I would have a little bit of a, laugh about this kind of stuff, just as a coping mechanism, but here it's just a somber reminder that when you do unchecked statements, sometimes it can really come back and bite you right on the ass. So to give you gamers an idea, literally a couple days ago, I saw that Karl posted, "The court has decided to stream my decision live on YouTube, so you can watch me win or lose in real time." So they provided a YouTube link to Mitchell v. Jobst 2025 QDC 41 defamation judgment. Now, immediately when you go to this link right over here, this is a brand new account made by, the courts of Queensland. And they actually just removed this video entirely after the judgment was presented. But you can actually pick up a original clip of this, 24-minute supercut of the. So that's just all you kind of need to hear if you wanted the TLDR of who won, okay? So obviously, this was pretty aggravated according to the actual ruling in this case. And so I pulled up the actual PDF, the actual court ruling itself, which is over 100 pages, but I'll read through most of the relevant sections for you. So inside here, the actual damages for non-economic loss is the sum of 300,000 Australian dollars, plus interest of 34,668.50 cents, interest upon delivering of this judgment or by filing and serving a written submission within 14 days, for aggravated damages in the sum of 50,000 plus interest of $5,778.08. So all of this tabulates to around, I believe, 380,000 Australian dollars, which if you convert it to American dollars, for most of my audience watching, is $237,000, a little bit above that, I believe, or around that exact amount. So that is a lot of cash, obviously. That is a considerable amount of money. And I believe on top of that, you would also have to think of legal fees and whatnot as well, too. So I don't believe it just stops there. Now, if you're wondering, does Karl have a way out through this? Well, obviously, in a lot of cases, you can obviously appeal a judgment, but I am not necessarily an expert at Australian law, nor am I an expert at any real law. But again, this is going to be something that Karl would have to consider. If he appeals, is he going to get in or out of this? Just fine. Let's look at what cost Karl over 200,000 US dollars. What was the actual defamation being said? So on point 15, 26th May 2021, Mr. Jobst published a YouTube video entitled "The Biggest Conman in Video Game History Strikes Again." In some detail, he accused Mr. Mitchell of cheating and of pursuing unmerited litigation against people who accused him of cheating. He also said the following about Mr. Mitchell. So this actually involves another YouTuber known as Apollo Legend. So for anybody that has no idea about Apollo Legend, he was a YouTuber that, a few years ago at this point had actually taken their own life, okay? Now, obviously, this is a pretty traumatic experience. This is a pretty traumatic situation for not just the community, but also the family of Apollo Legend. So, at this moment in time, Billy Mitchell was kind of, unfortunately, involved into this case because of a statement that Karl had made, right? So, inside Carl's video that was pointed out in the lawsuit, the biggest con men in video game history strikes again. At around 16 minutes, listen to this real quickly.
He also sued YouTuber Apollo Legend for $1 million. I haven't spoken about this publicly, but this lawsuit ultimately ended with Apollo giving in and settling with Mitchell. The lawsuit against Apollo was just as...
You catch that? I actually, put the cursor over the actual statement right there. But to give you an idea, Carl had, or that section of the video had actually been removed, and the defense for Billy's lawyers actually provided the entire transcript of what the actual defamatory claim was. So let's read it together. He also sued YouTuber Apollo Legend for $1 million. I haven't spoken about this publicly, but this lawsuit ultimately ended with Apollo giving in and settling with Billy Mitchell. He was forced to remove all his videos about Mitchell's cheating and paid him a large sum of money. This left him deeply in debt, which required him to find extra work. But with his ongoing health issues, this was all too much of a burden, and he ultimately took his own life. Not that Mitchell would ever care, though. In fact, when Mitchell thought Apollo died earlier, he expressed joy at the thought. The lawsuit against Apollo was just as frivolous as the rest, and Apollo definitely would have won in court. But again, he was extremely ill and couldn't handle the ongoing stress. So this paragraph right here, if you look at it real carefully, it can be argued, and it was argued by Mitchell's lawyers, that it serves as him putting the blame of Apollo Legend's, death, or his taking of his own life in this situation, onto the stress caused by the litigation instigated by Billy Mitchell. Now, this entire lawsuit, is kind of a bombshell for me, because I was wondering the whole time, it's probably got to do with all the cheating stuff, right? This is not stuff that I really was privy to. Everything about this section of the lawsuit kind of feels new to me, right? Because when I read a statement like that, unfortunately, I really can't see the defamation made, against Billy Mitchell. I can see why. There's a big difference between cheating a record at, playing King Kong and then being fingered for, the cause of death of one individual, right? Like, obviously, the second part of that, the second, statement is absolutely damaging to somebody's reputation. And it really seems like, according to the court, they actually were able to point out how damaging this was in terms of monetary damages and reputational damages.
And the thing is, obviously, if you were following this at all and you knew anything about the Apollo Legend story, obviously this video is from his final note to the world, where, again, I am sure that the lawyers for Billy Mitchell have brought this up, but it's evident that obviously Billy Mitchell really wasn't a contributing factor to this man's, a man taking his own life.
So at some point, Keemstar gets involved into this case too, so let's read this section. On 4 June 2021, Mr. Keem contacted Mr. Jops by Twitter saying, "Hey, gotta speak to you about Apollo and Billy Mitchell stuff," and asking for his telephone number. Mr. Jops told the court that he provided the number, and Mr. Keem then called him, telling him that Mr. Mitchell was unhappy about the assertion that Apollo Legend had paid him money in settlement because it was not true. Mr. Jops told Keem that he would remove part of the video and investigate further by contacting Apollo Legend's brother to check if it was correct. So, having received the telephone call with Mr. Keem, Jops altered the video on 4 June 2021 to remove the following words right over here. I haven't spoken about this publicly, but the lawsuit ultimately ended with Apollo giving in and settling with Billy Mitchell. So this section that was removed from the video is transcripted here. Having done so, he sent a message to Keem saying, "I've edited out that section, will take a few hours. This is based on your word. I will be confirming from his brother also. If his brother backs up this or Mitchell provides any concrete evidence I was wrong, I will make a statement about it. If I have nothing concrete, I'll just leave the video as edited out and won't mention it anywhere." Apparently, he also removed the part of the video where he saw Mr. Mitchell's response video. When he saw it later that day, in response, Jops posted a tweet in which he said, Billy Mitchell's Twitter handle claims he will sue me for saying Apollo Legend paid him money. I removed that portion from my video, not because it's wrong, but because this isn't the issue I want to go over to court with. I'd rather he sue me over his fake Donkey Kong scores." Which again is what I kind of really thought this whole lawsuit should have been about. But realistically, it seems like the statement that Carl made was like the ultimate silver fucking bullet against him in the court of law. Now, again, based on how this lawsuit played out, right? Like, obviously, we're not even talking about the fact that Billy was, cheating at a game of Donkey Kong. That wasn't really even in the question. Realistically, it seems like when it came to this defamation lawsuit, shifting the focus of attention away from that to, again, this Apollo Legends statement was pretty much all Billy's lawyers needed to guarantee the win on his part, which, again, Carl, I've always known to be a pretty good guy. I've investigated with him. He's a pretty thorough, diligent individual. This is just obviously one of those blunders where it's like you're looking at it from the sidelines. Again, it's a somber realization that anything you say on the internet, especially when it's in a high-profile investigation, you should always be 1,000,000% careful for. But I'll get to a lot of that later towards the end of the video because I have my own insight regarding a different matter that I worked on with Carl.
Billy Mitchell is referring to the YouTuber Apollo Legend, who tragically took his own life in December of 2020. I won't go into specifics about this particular point because it does relate to his ongoing lawsuit against me. But again, everything he just said is a lie. I didn't say what he claims that I said, and my source for what I did say was not just a deleted post on Reddit.
This is a clip that I just showed you from 19th August 2023, so it's a while back. And this clip was actually referenced to by Carl, again, when he was talking about, again, the aftermath of this case. So there's a lot of lies being spread that I falsely claimed Billy sued me because I said he cheated. I never claimed this. I only claimed it was irrelevant as part of my defense. I didn't openly discuss certain details for obvious reasons, but I was never trying to hide why I was being sued. So the reason for this this claim comes out is now that Carl has lost and this statement has come out, there's a lot of people that are, rightfully a little confused that, whoa, why are you bringing up Apollo Legend and litigating who's responsible for him taking his own life? Well, it's because I would say, just from a viewer perspective, I really did think this whole case was about just cheating. I actually did have a chance to speak to Carl's defense. They were actually pulling me as a relevant witness. I actually didn't get into his case at all. It really did feel like they were talking about Billy Mitchell's cheating for a video game. That's literally all I was pretty much asked for. This kind of felt like a bit of a bombshell for me, but looking at the clip that Carl posted, yeah, it's clear that he mentioned that Apollo Legend was a part of this lawsuit. But I feel like there probably should have been more transparency, which obviously even Carl agrees. But the criticism that I should have been more transparent is valid, and I'm sorry. Truthfully, I don't want to repeat or mention any claims regarding Apollo Legend because it may have jeopardized my defense. And now it makes more sense, right? Like, obviously, when you're getting sued for defamation, the best thing your lawyers can say is, shut the fuck up. Wait for everything to be finished. As somebody who is, I guess, putting my foot into the door of litigation as a plaintiff regarding defamation, I am literally just going to say that. That's pretty much all I have to say. Everything just goes through lawyers. Because if you feel like you have a case, like Billy Mitchell believed he had a case, like Carl believed he had a case, you gotta be quiet. Unfortunately, in Carl's, situation, he wasn't necessarily super duper quiet, and he also was, I would say, decently antagonistic against Billy Mitchell throughout this entire process, which obviously I would imagine any court would look at and say, probably not a good idea, right? Probably not the best of ideas to go in gung-ho. But that's just how this whole situation kind of ends. So obviously some people started to look at the amount of money that Carl had raised in his defense fund, which was around 200,000 Australian dollars. And it's pretty reasonable, obviously, if you're following this, that Carl most definitely used this money in order for his defense lawsuit. In fact, looking through it, he basically mentions that, yeah, my name is Carl, I'm a YouTuber, often reports on video game cheaters. Last year, Billy Mitchell, star of King of Kong, proven video game cheater, sued me for defamation, claiming damages of $450,000. So these lawsuits are unhinged, and it's highly likely Billy will ultimately lose. Hurts to read that, but until we go to trial, it requires a lot of money to deal with. I would appreciate any help that you are able to provide. Naturally, the more money I'm able to raise, the better my legal defense will be, but that's just the way it works. If and when I defeat Mitchell in court, he will likely have to pay back a lot of the costs that I have incurred. So August 19, 2023, Carl says, hey, you absolute legends. Thank you so much for the support you've given so far. Mitchell ended up backing out of the second lawsuit, which means all funds will go towards helping with the existing lawsuit and to deal with the inevitable future threats. I'm hoping to get the trial done within the next few months, so fingers crossed it'll all be wrapped up soon. I think people can kind of reasonably say that maybe there wasn't enough transparency, and again, even Carl wouldn't be so against saying that things could have been a lot more transparent. But I really do believe that obviously Carl, wasn't going to talk about the Apollo Legend stuff simply due to the fact that it was definitely a thing that put him into the hot water. And obviously, restating a defamatory claim is not something you want to be doing in the process of any form of litigation.
Now, I think from a viewer perspective, like what's really just the most shocking part about all this as I'm watching it is that this was about the Apollo Legend claim versus, again, like the claim of cheating, which is mostly what I thought this lawsuit was effectively about. Realistically, looking at everything that I've read, yeah, cheating might have been a part of it, but generally speaking, Billy Mitchell won on the Apollo Legend stuff. And I wish this was definitely far more transparent to the audience. I feel like a lot of the support that went towards the direction of Carl was relegated simply because he was challenging this man's credibility when it came to video game records, right? Which I believe Carl and plenty of other creators have done a pretty reasonably good job of actually, pointing out. But obviously, if the claim is, you're putting a man in the responsibility, or you're sort of burdening them with the responsibility of the death of another individual, that in fact can be far more damaging reputationally, financially, whatever, than just the whole video game cheating stuff, right? And it seems like that's what Billy latched onto, and that's really what hit it. So obviously the community response, the community reaction to Carl now is definitely something that is going to be interesting to watch. I would be interested to see what Carl's response to all of this is in terms of, not being, at least in my opinion, in the opinion of plenty of other people, as readily transparent in soliciting for these donations and relaying this case, right? Because for years we were told Billy is definitely losing this case. And today's reality is just dramatically different.
So ultimately, look, at the end of all this, ladies and gentlemen, Billy Mitchell appeared to have a plan, and apparently in his case, the plan actually seemed to have worked. Now, I'm sure that, Carl's going to try appealing this. Maybe he might. I don't know. Depends on what his legal defense will say in this situation. But, it's kind of a hard thing for me to really look at because obviously I know that Carl is a pretty good person in regards to investigating things with. I mean, I've done the completionist investigation with him. And even at the time, I will say during that investigation, my usage of words regarding the completionist and anybody associated to him were, I would say, less, I guess the best way to say it is I was less dramatic almost about it, right? Like, he would use certain verbiage in his videos that I wouldn't be comfortable with because I'm always really, I actually went through those videos. In fact, most of my investigation videos go through a team of lawyers that we have that will comb through the video for legal clearances, right? And it's one of the things that after this entire situation, anybody reporting on people, like if you're a YouTuber, being a YouTuber and looking at people in the news are two different worlds, right? Like in the newsroom, you have entire legal teams that comb through every word that you're putting out there so that they know they don't get hit with, lawsuits that could ultimately damage them in the end. And there have been pretty high profile ones too. Like I believe there was the Tucker Carlson case with, I believe it was Dominion Voting, where literally Fox had to pay up the ass for a situation involving, I believe, defamation. I have to probably look more into that as I talk. But yeah, it was insane, right? Like there's a reason why legal exists in this kind of stuff. If Carl, I believe, had better legal clearance on this, I don't even know if he did or didn't during this entire process for the video section of his stuff, he probably wouldn't be paying up the ass for Billy Mitchell's case, right? Because his statement probably would never have been made. But it is a shame because I know that Carl's heart is in the right place. Unfortunately, when it comes to a defamation case, it's hard not to look at what Billy is referencing here and say, yeah, that's defamation. Because clearly, being a cheater at a video game is a lot different than being fingered for the cause of death for one YouTuber out in the world, right? Or just not even a YouTuber, just another human being. That is a bad thing to see. But yeah, Carl lost, and I wish this was a giant April Fool's joke, but it wasn't. Carl, unfortunately, has lost against Billy Mitchell. And it's not something that I personally saw coming just because I didn't even expect this element of the defense to jump in. But let me tell you, Billy found the silver bullet on the ground. Like, he's fucking Hank from Breaking Bad. Carl's walking up with the whole, like, axe. He finds a little bullet on the ground, loads it into the chamber, and boom. That's just how the fucking cookie crumbles. But ladies and gentlemen, my heart does go out to Carl still. I mean, losing a case like this is obviously very damaging. Especially to somebody who is, not obviously, I would say, on the same financial level as Billy Mitchell. But, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's just a fucking somber feeling. Yeah, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.